They called her just a social worker, a woman with a notebook, a bicycle, and a quiet smile. But what the world didn't see was that inside that small frame burned a courage so fierce it defied an entire empire. While soldiers marched with rifles, she fought with kindness. While others built walls, she built a way out. Her name was Irena Sendler, the woman who rescued over 2,000 children from the heart of hell itself, the Warsaw Ghetto, the girl who fought the darkness. Warsaw, 1939. The streets trembled under the thunder of boots. Nazi banners hung like scars across the city, red and black consuming the color of life. Amid the chaos walked a young Polish woman, Irena Sendler. She wasn't a soldier. She didn't carry a weapon. She carried a satchel filled with papers, medicine, and hope. Before the war, she worked as a social worker for the Warsaw Department of Social Welfare. Her job was simple: to help the poor, the sick, and the forgotten. But when the Nazis came, the definition of forgotten changed forever. The Jewish population of Warsaw, over 400,000 men, women, and children, was forced into a tiny area of the city. The Warsaw Ghetto became a prison of starvation, disease, and despair. For most, it was a one-way passage to death. But not for Irena. Where others saw the barbed wire, she saw the children behind it. Where others saw death, she saw the faint pulse of life still beating, waiting for someone to take a risk. So she made a decision no one would have blamed her for avoiding. She would save them, as many as she could. The Secret Network. The walls of the Warsaw Ghetto weren't made just of brick. They were made of fear, tall, gray, and cruel, with soldiers at every gate and death waiting behind every order. Inside, children starved in silence. Their laughter, once the heartbeat of the city, had vanished. But outside those walls, in the shadowed streets of Warsaw, Irena Sendler was building something that the Nazis could neither see nor destroy: a network of humanity. By 1940, Irena had joined a secret organization known as WWII, the Council to Aid Jews. It was one of the few underground movements in all of occupied Europe, dedicated entirely to saving Jewish lives. But even before joining WWII, Irena had already found her own ways to slip into the ghetto. She used her official papers as a public health worker, claiming to be inspecting for typhus and disease. The Germans feared epidemics, so they let her in. What they didn't know was that every time she entered those gates, she carried something the Nazis could never measure: hope. Inside the ghetto, Irena saw the impossible. Children no older than 6 lying in alleys, clutching each other for warmth. Mothers with hollow eyes, whispering prayers through the night. The sound of hunger was everywhere, and it was louder than gunfire. She could have turned away, but instead she began to collect names of families, addresses, children who could be saved, if someone dared. The plan. Irena knew one thing: if she wanted to save children, she had to get them out. And to do that, she needed an army of ordinary heroes. So she gathered a circle of trusted allies, doctors, nuns, priests, orphanage directors, even sewer workers. Each person became a link in her secret chain of rescue. They used every method imaginable: children hidden inside ambulances and toolboxes, infants sedated and carried out in coffins or potato sacks. Some walked out through the courthouse gate, disguised as Polish children with fake papers. Others were taken through sewers and underground tunnels, guided by workers who knew every inch of the city's underbelly. Every rescue was a heartbeat away from death. Every noise, every glance could mean exposure, but Irena kept going. Night after night, she smuggled names and faces out of hell, one child at a time. The records of hope. She knew these children would grow up not knowing who they really were. Their names, their parents, their identities, erased by war. So she did something remarkable. She wrote down every real name, every family on small slips of paper, and hid them inside glass jars. Each jar was buried beneath an apple tree in a friend's backyard. To the Nazis, they were just jars of dirt. But to Irena, they were the seeds of memory. The hope that one day, when the war was over, the children could be reunited with their families. And so, by the time 1943 came, Irena and her network had saved over 2,500 children. Every one of them had a false name, a fake birth certificate, and a real chance to live. She didn't carry a gun. She carried a list of names, and in that list lay the future of an entire generation. The arrest. By late 1943, the world inside the Warsaw Ghetto had gone silent. Most of its inhabitants were gone, sent to Treblinka, to gas chambers disguised as showers. But in the ruins of what was once a neighborhood, Irena's network was still working. The Gestapo had started noticing. Too many Jewish children showing up with Aryan papers. Too many whispers of names that didn't belong. And then, one of Irena's couriers was caught. No one knows exactly how. A raid, a wrong turn, maybe just bad luck. But in that moment, the invisible web Irena had built began to unravel. The knock at the door. It was early October 1943. Irena was at home, reviewing her list, the names she had to move next, the children she had to get out before winter. Then came the knock, hard, sharp, rhythmic. The kind of knock you only heard once in Nazi-occupied Poland, because it meant they had found you. She opened the door to find Gestapo agents standing before her. One of them smiled, the kind of smile that held no warmth. "Irena Sendler," he said. "You're under arrest for aiding Jews." The interrogation. They took her to Powiak prison, one of the most feared places in all of Warsaw. A place where screams echoed through stone walls, and hope was the first thing to die. For days, they beat her, broke her bones, and tortured her, demanding the names of the children, her collaborators, her network. Every time she fell to the ground, they lifted her up just to hit her again. Every question was the same. Who are they? Where are they? But every answer was silence. She had memorized the lists. Every child, every alias, every hiding place. And yet she said nothing, not a single name, not one. Even when they broke her legs, she refused to speak. The miracle. After 3 months of torture, the Gestapo finally decided she was useless. They sentenced her to death. She was taken to the execution site. Her hands bound, her body broken. But before the bullets could fly, something unexpected happened. A German guard stepped forward and whispered, "Run." He handed her a slip of paper. It was a bribe, paid by Żegota, her underground organization. They had used every connection, every coin, every ounce of luck they had left to save her. That night, Irena Sendler disappeared. The Gestapo reported her as executed. But she lived, hidden under a new name, walking again on broken legs, and she went straight back to work. The unbroken spirit, even after torture, even after pain, even after escaping death itself. She went back to the children. She checked every name, every address, every hiding place. She updated her jars, making sure every one of those 2,500 children had a chance to be found again when the war was over. To her, the fight wasn't over. It wasn't about revenge. It was about keeping promises. By the end of the war, Irena Sendler had lost friends, her health, and her freedom. But she had saved more lives than any soldier ever could. The aftermath. The aftermath. When the war finally ended in 1945, Warsaw was unrecognizable. A city of 1 million souls reduced to rubble. Streets once filled with life were now paths of dust and broken glass. Among the ruins walked Irena Sendler. Older, thinner, leaning on crutches, her legs still twisted from the torture she'd survived. But her eyes still carried the same fire. She went straight to where her hope had been buried. A small garden behind a friend's house. Under the shade of an apple tree, there, in the cold earth, she began to dig. One by one, she unearthed the glass jars. Dirt-covered, cracked but intact. Inside them were the names of children, names the world had forgotten, the future she had saved, the children of the jars. After the war, Irena worked tirelessly to reconnect those names with the people who had once called them son or daughter. It was not easy. Most of the parents had perished in concentration camps. Many of the children were too young to remember who they were. But still, she tried. Every jar she opened was like opening a wound, but also a miracle. Every name was proof that kindness could survive genocide. Some of those children grew up believing they were Polish or Catholic. Then, decades later, they learned the truth, that their real families had been among the millions lost in the Holocaust. To them, Irena Sendler wasn't just a name. She was the reason they were alive. Forgotten and found. Again. For years after the war, no one knew her story. Poland fell under Soviet rule, and the tales of wartime heroes like Irena were silenced. She lived quietly, working in social welfare again, helping the poor, just as she had before the war. It wasn't until 1999, when a group of American high school students from Kansas stumbled upon her name in a dusty article, that her story was brought back to life. They wrote a play called Life in a Jar, and with that, the world finally learned about the woman who had risked everything to save others. By then, Irena was an old woman, frail but sharp. When asked if she considered herself a hero, she simply smiled and said, "I could have done more. This regret will follow me until I die." Her legacy. In 2007, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. She didn't win, but she never needed a medal, because her victory wasn't in recognition, it was in remembrance. Thousands of lives lived because she refused to surrender her humanity. Thousands of children who grew up, had families, and built futures because one woman with a notebook and courage stood against an empire of death. The echo. History remembers wars through generals and battles, but sometimes the greatest victory doesn't come from power. It comes from compassion. Irena Sendler didn't wear a uniform. She didn't lead an army. But in a world consumed by hatred, she chose love, and that choice echoed through generations. This is her story. This is humanity.